Hey, how you doing there? I saw your invitation to become a YouTube friend, so what I thought I would do is send you a video. I see you're talking about Final Cut Pro 10, Final Cut Pro X. Just to show you real quick, here's my little film making setup there, and you can see that's where I do all my video editing, and I got Final Cut Pro 10 there loaded up on the back there. I just did a video, uploaded it last night, actually this morning, on my pipe smoking channel. So anyway, my name's Francis, and okay, I'm not a professional video film person like yourself, but I can say I've been working with Final Cut Pro 7, even before that Final Cut Pro 6, since 2007, right? Yeah, 2007. I got my first Mac, which I'm using right now. It's a gift to me by a doctor friend of mine. I was a prison chaplain, and I was using Adobe Premiere Elements, believe it or not. Probably one of the best programs, at least as far as PC world goes, that I ever had. That box for $100 as an amateur, I have to tell you, it did more than I could possibly have asked of it. Great program, Adobe Premiere, fantastic program. That being said, when I finally got my first Mac, and then later I upgraded to my Mighty Mac Pro there, you know, I got Final Cut, the whole studio. Love it. I see you have some people subscribe to you, Final Cut King, Zach King. Love his videos. Learned an awful lot from Zach. I originally learned a lot of Final Cut from a guy named eMeek77. You may remember him. He is now Apple Soldier or Apple Shake Guru. So anyway, I'm not a professional. I'm not Apple certified, you know, that kind of thing. But I can honestly say that I've used Final Cut just about every day for the last 4 or 5 years. I've done lots of little projects on my other channel, Stevenson RF. Now it's a religious channel, I'll warn you. So it's not an attempt to proselytize you, or it's just to show you my evolution or my maturity as I learned the software. And again, I'm not a professional, but again, I know that there's a lot of bad PR out there on Final Cut Pro 10. You probably will think I'm an Apple fanboy, although I'm kind of old to be a fanboy, fan man. And I certainly respect your opinion, because you are a film, you're in the biz, okay? You're actually in the biz. You know, all I can say is I think there were some things that I guess Apple decided that they needed to do, okay? And I think Avid and, of course, Premiere are probably already 64-bit, okay? I think one of the hiccups and the problems that we're having is that we made a jump from 32-bit to 64-bit. And I just think that's, you know, they had to redesign the software. I'm thinking if backwards compatibility could be restored, let's say now we can import our Final Cut Pro 7 projects into Final Cut Pro 10, and it had multi-camera edit. I'm just kind of wondering if a lot of people would actually say, well, but I think a part of it has to do with the fact, and you alluded to it, well, now I got to go out and learn another software package. And so am I going to learn Final Cut Pro 10, which is limited, and granted, it is limited right now, or am I going to go ahead and spend the time and the money? You probably get a little bit of a break, I would assume, because you're kind of in the plus maybe you wouldn't have to, well, of course, no, you would have to have, you'd have to have your own stuff so when you went out in the field and stuff. So yeah, you're going to have to invest some money. Just like a carpenter has to get, you know, tools, you're going to have to get your tools for the field as well. So, you know, that means probably a MacBook Pro, and all tricked out and everything, and with whatever it is, Final Cut Pro or Premiere. But I really think that they had to redesign it to make it 64-bit so that they can move it into the next generation. You know, I think in some ways it's a little bit like the Apple iPhone 4 debacle last year. You know, the antenna, you're holding it wrong, you know, that kind of thing. I think that once the brouhaha maybe dies down, now, I did see the petition of the 600 professional film editors, or I don't know if it was directors, but film people that were going to boycott, or not maybe some boycott, but maybe it was a protest, and demanding that Apple somehow reinstate Final Cut Pro 7. I will tell you this: one of the things that a lot of people are overlooking, and I know Zach King gave it a real thumbs down. He said he gave it a 2 in his review on the Apple Store, and he said, I wanted to go back and change my 2 to a 1. Okay, well, all right. There's a lot of consternation out there, obviously. But I think that maybe when some of it dies down, and I do believe Apple is hearing people. They're not stupid. I think they're going to make it backwards compatible, and I think they're going to bring back multi-camera editing. I think that's, multi-cam editing. I think that's going to happen. But I will tell you this, okay, again, this is just a guy who does his own videos, in-house, and some of them are just really, I'll be honest with you, they're pretty amateurish. I admit that. But one of the things that I really like about Final Cut Pro 10 right now, and it could change, is the fact that, okay, I spent about 3.5 hours putting together a video that had 10 extra, little. You can go see it. I think you already saw it. Actually, I think you did see it. And that's no big deal. But still, when I did that in Final Cut Pro 7, I did one for May, a month ago. It literally took me about almost 4 hours to render that all out, because I had all of those 10, 11, 12 tracks, I had my background track. I had, then I did a little cheap chroma key, which was horrible chroma key, by the way. And, but anyway, it took at least 4 hours just to render that. Okay. And I knew that was one of the big things about Final Cut. I mean, it wasn't Final Cut's fault. It's just the fact that, rendering is part of, at least in the old way of doing things, that's part and parcel of making videos. You're going to have to render it out every time you did a color correction, every time you put in a special effect. Well, you're a professional. So all I'm trying to say is that, and this is unusual because it's usually us old fuddy-duddies that are, I'm not going to give up my Final Cut Pro 7. I'll have to pry it out of my cold, dead fingers. That kind of a thing. But for some reason, I guess I kind of sense that, okay, they're trying. Now, I think they're trying to make Final Cut Pro something that's going to still be around 10 years from now, okay? But they had to redesign it. Now, granted, it looks a little bit like, everybody says iMovie. Actually, now think about this. What has that dark interface? Well, it was Shake. Shake had that dark gray interface. And also not Final Cut, but FX Home software from the UK. They kind of had a dark background, boxes or whatever you call it. The interface was kind of that dark slate gray kind of thing. Anyway, so that's just my take on it. You're welcome to take it or toss it, and maybe agree, disagree. But I think, again, once all of the hullabaloo kind of dies down and people kind of say, well, maybe we're a little quick to judge there, they might find themselves going back. I'm seeing some people kind of maybe coming in the back door and saying, well, maybe it's not all that bad. Let's give this another chance. Again, it is Final Cut Pro, and I think that once they kind of put back in some of those elements. And my other question is this. Now think about this, and this is another thing I'd ask you as a professional. This was in beta testing for what? Year and a half? 2 years? And then 2 months ago, when they showed off Final Cut Pro 10 for the first time to a bunch of, I thought they were professional film editors, why weren't people asking those questions then? And I don't know if they got a chance to actually play with the software. Something tells me they probably didn't. But still, people, I'm going to ask that. That would be one of the first things I'm going to ask. Yes, do you have a question? Yeah. Is it backwards compatible? Will we be able to import FCP files into it? From Final Cut Pro 7? I'd be asking that question. And the multicam, I mean, those are okay. Those were, you know, biggies. I'm sure somebody somewhere had to ask those questions. So my question is, why didn't somebody, you know, in beta or even 2 months ago ask those questions? Okay, so where were those people then? Okay, so that's just my little observation. Okay, so am I going to tell you that it's wonderful and it's going to make your cup of coffee and it's going to make your life better? No, I'm not going to tell you that at all. It's got some bugginess to it. I'm going to be honest with you, but I will tell you this: I don't miss rendering, and if I can live with this for a few months, or you know, chances are there's probably going to be an update soon. That's the funny thing about Apple. They listen, and I think they're going to fix some of those issues. And I'm thinking, okay, so let's say they fix those issues within a month or two. It is backwards compatible now, okay, and it has multicam edit, okay, and a few other things that the big pros have been kind of saying. It doesn't have this, it doesn't have that. Okay, supposing those things, you know, next week or a month from now, they're there. Okay, now you got those things. Now what are you going to do? Okay, I think the big issue for a lot of people is having to relearn the software. Okay, it took me 3.5 hours to make my video. It would have taken me probably, well, it took me about an hour the first time I did laying down all those tracks in Final Cut Pro 7 because I knew what I was doing. But I had to figure out, okay, now this magnetic timeline in some ways is cool, it's good, but you know, it's kind of buggy. It's not as Final Cut Pro-ish as maybe a lot of us would like it to be. But it has some good features. And one of the things about Apple software is it's very intuitive. And sometimes I've had to learn, unlike Microsoft stuff, you know, where you have to go through 3 or 4 different little, you know, intermediate steps to get to where you want. Sometimes, you know, it's right there underneath your, you know, right click or, you know, drop down menu, and oh, there it is. Okay, cool. Yeah, you're gonna have to relearn the shortcuts. But I'm just saying, you know, maybe give it a chance. You know, maybe you don't have to like it, but you know, you can hold your nose a little bit and say, "Oh, Final Cut Pro 10." But okay, but again, I think once some of the bugginess is taken out of it and they beef it up, I think it might surprise a lot of people. So that's my 2 cents. Thanks for watching, and this has been Francis saying thanks for your little invite there, and we'll talk soon. Okay, bye.